Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to come on today and speak a little bit about moon signs. It has been on my heart as we are building up to a full moon in Scorpio in this month of May. I am a natal moon in Scorpio, so I feel very connected to the moon and I feel that that energy is really coming in and I feel that I've learned new things about the moon. So thank you so much for being here, and I am excited to channel in some energies about each individual moon sign, as well as just use some of the traditional and more contemporary astrological knowledge that I have about moon signs, in my own study, working with clients, and that I've learned over the years of doing this. So, the moon in astrology, it is not actually the most understood planet, we'll call it, or body, we'll call it. The moon is not a planet, but it is a moon, and it is one of the most important, in my opinion, placements in a chart, especially when you're using natal astrology. The moon really changes a personality, it really defines a personality, and the moon is a very adapting, connective energy, so the way that someone's moon exhibits in their chart tends to change throughout their life and can actually change throughout the month. Depending on where the current moon transits, it will hit your natal moon and cause all sorts of different emotions, tendencies, habits. There's an ebb and flow with the moon, and everyone's natal moon sort of connects to the current moon at different times of the month, depending on the moon cycle, and this is sort of responsible for the sort of patterned changes in our personality that we experience throughout the month and throughout the year. So if you guys also hadn't seen yet, you can check the description box below to pre-order my ebook on moon signs and on navigating your spiritual journey based on your moon sign, understanding your moon more and understanding, the house that your moon is in, the sign that your moon is in, and what all of that means toward navigating your spiritual journey. You can check the description box below to pre-order that. That will be coming out in July. So I'm really excited about that. It's been hard to not really speak about it, but I've really enjoyed the process of planning that out, and I'm still in the process of writing and editing this ebook, and it's been just an incredible journey, and I feel like I've learned so much just by sort of setting out that intention to understand the moon more, to understand what is really deep behind the moon, because the moon is sort of the ultimate depth. The moon and Pluto kind of share this really deep, watery, powerful, still waters run deep, intense energy behind them. And you'll see in the book as well that I speak a lot about the moon's relationship to Pluto, which is so interesting, and it's been sort of an epiphany for me, actually, the relationship between the moon and Pluto, and how they sort of have a synergy between them, a symbiosis, and work together. So you can see that in the ebook, as well as your moon sign, the house that your moon is in, the moon in relationship to all the planets. It is sort of delving into some of those subjects, and again, that's coming out in July, and you can pre-order that below, so that's in the description box. But yeah, anyway, let's talk more about the moon in astrology. It has sort of a traditional meaning of, emotions, psychology, even fear and anxiety, but also comfort and family. The moon is very connected to parenthood. It is often associated with the mother, but it also has connections to the father as well. It is the idea of nurturing. It is the idea of growth, of the type of energy that inspires growth as well. So the moon in our chart shows where we need to grow. It shows where we give growth to others. It shows how we parent others, how we are parented, and it shows how we symbiotically connect with people as well. So any flags of codependency, any flags of independence, solitary nature, need for socialization, all of these things can be seen in the moon based on how we parent, see ourselves, socialize, and consider our space. The moon has a lot to do with space as well, how we fill space, and it shares a common energy line with Neptune in this way, as there can be a void with the moon, especially when it's placed in certain signs, but we'll get more into that in a second. Basically, the moon in some ways is much more complex than it's led to be thought, and much more simple than it's led to be thought. And I'm sort of here to talk on some of the deeper aspects of the moon, because I know that a lot of my audience are quite astrologically concerned people. So yes, this is a great for anybody. The book is great for anybody. It really gets into the traditional messages, but I'm kind of taking a new spin on some of the ideals of the moon, and I'm kind of challenging some of the more traditional ideas. So this is not your typical moon video. My book is not your typical moon book. I definitely challenge some of the traditional messages while not disregarding them, because they don't need to be disregarded. They're correct for a reason. I respect them. And I don't disregard them in any way. I'm just building more into them and sort of differentiating between some of the subtleties of the traditional messages. So one thing about the moon that a lot of people get a little bit mixed up with or find problems with is the way that it defines. So a lot of people think, okay, I have moon in Aquarius or moon in Pisces, whatever it is. This means that my emotions will be this certain way, or this means that I will act emotionally in this way. And this is a flaw in the moon. The moon does not define your emotions. It does not, that would be more of a Saturnian ideal. The moon just sets a parameter for potentials and inspiration. So the moon sets a parameter based on how somebody else may interact with you and how you might respond based on that. It doesn't define the emotions themselves. And this is the first thing in healing your moon, is understanding that because, oh, I have a debilitated moon in Capricorn, that means that emotions will always be difficult for me. No, you have to go into that and see, okay, I have a moon in Capricorn. That might mean that there are a lot of people in my life who don't have emotional understanding of themselves, and I can't use that as an excuse to deny my own emotional growth. You know, a lot of unemotional people, moon in Capricorn, surrounded by unemotional people. Or people who prioritize money or prestige over emotions. You know, we're not quite there yet, but rather than thinking that your moon sign defines you or thinking that the moon defines a certain emotional lifestyle for you, you have to understand that it defines more so the way that you're inspired by people and the way that you react to people. And that beneath that, and this is kind of a thing with astrology in general, nothing is solidified, nothing is set into place. Astrology is such a complex science because it has so many layers. You have your natal chart, you have the transits, you have progressions, you have asteroids, you have planets, you have nodes, you have bodies, you have points, you have angles. So there is a never-ending layer of complexity that you can delve into. So it's really important not to get caught up in, oh, I have moon in Scorpio, debilitated. That means I'm going to struggle emotionally. No, you could have moon in Scorpio, you know, trine Venus, and this really makes emotional experiences rewarding and helps your career or money situation. There are more layers, so don't get caught up in your moon sign defining a certain way of being is really one of the first things with the moon. We also have to understand how psychological the moon is as well. A lot of times we just associate it with emotion and we just associate it with feeling, and it is all of those things. It is intuition, it is, you know, your gut feeling, but it is also the way that your hormones work, your psychology, your chemical balance. This is also Mercury too, but the moon plays a large role in this because there's a health aspect with the moon, what you ingest, what you take in, food, emotions, people, situations, and the effect that that has on the chemistry of your body. This is very connected to the moon and the sign of Cancer because, as a lot of you know, the moon is at home in Cancer. It is at home in Cancer, it is exalted in Taurus, and it is debilitated in Scorpio and Capricorn. And then all the other signs have more of a neutral weight in the moon. So yes, and I definitely have no disagreement with those assignments for the moon. Those signs definitely present in that way to me, you know, really good in Cancer and Taurus, struggles more in Scorpio and Capricorn. But yes, we mustn't forget the psychological nature of the moon. And last thing about the moon in general, before I get into each sign of the moon, we have to remember that the moon is a very changing energy. Again, this sort of goes into what I was talking about being too defined by the moon. And I think in general, like when we're delving into astrology, when we're first getting into astrology, we really look into our moon sign, right? And we really get connected to that because it's sort of past the level of, oh, sun sign astrology. You're kind of really starting to dabble by the time you get into the moon. So it can have a very special connection to us. And again, we just get really connected into how my moon sign will emote, how my moon sign, like how I will emote in my life based on what my moon sign is. And it always changes, is my point with the moon. Within each sign of the moon, there are 40, 50 different ways of emoting. And I think that we get really tied into the very stereotypical ways of emoting. Oh, you have a moon in Aries. That means you're going to have a nasty anger temper and you're going to be prone to like lashing out and like throwing things. Or moon in Scorpio as well. When sometimes those moons can be very, very sweet and very, you know, not temperamental. So I'm going to get into some of those subtleties in this video. Remember that the moon changes. Don't worry if you have a debilitated moon. Also, don't think if you have an exalted or home moon that there's no emotional difficulty or emotional journey. It so depends on the angles, the planets to your moon, the house that it's in. All of these things really define more so how the moon operates than what sign it is placed in. So anyway, everyone, let's go ahead and get into sign by sign. I'm going to go quickly through each sign, what they represent, and you can also sort of add the house attachments with this as well. So if I'm talking about moon in Aries, you could also interpret that as moon in the first house. But again, if you want to see those really specific differentiations, you can check my ebook below, which will be coming out in July. So anyway, let's get into it. Moon in Aries. So moon in Aries is sometimes considered by other people to not really understand the emotional depth of a situation. Oftentimes they can be seen as a little bit aloof. They enjoy positivity. They are optimistic people. They will tend to avoid situations that have emotional depth or emotional problems. So they will more quickly walk away from somebody who seems to be emotionally unstable. Moon in Aries does not deal well with people who are pessimistic or people who look for emotionally depleting situations. They have a very healthy way of understanding when a situation is emotionally healthy or unhealthy. Moon in Aries has a really good meter, and Moon in Libra is also like this as well. It's this axis of the Libra-Aries axis. They have a really good, almost machine-like way of understanding when a situation is no longer emotionally healthy, and they will tend to move away from it. They don't tend to stay in emotionally depleting situations. They're a pioneering energy. So when you put the pioneering energy onto the moon, this is the difficulty of Moon in Aries, is that the moon likes to stay. The moon likes to be loyal. It likes to be comforting. It likes to nurture. You know, it parents. It doesn't abandon its children. So there can be an abandonment issue within Moon in Aries, whether they were abandoned by somebody, but more likely they will abandon other people. And that's not always a bad thing. You know, sometimes you have to walk away. Sometimes a situation doesn't need to be stayed in. But Moon in Aries really has to be careful for too quickly moving away. Sometimes they can deny themselves a payout or deny themselves an evolution by just getting cold feet. They can also be very entrepreneurial in their emotional energy. And what do I mean by that? They can handle a lot of small emotional situations at once. So they can feel a little bit burdened in the sense that there's just so many different situations in their lives that are lightly emotional that it becomes the same as that one that they tried to get away that was deeply emotional. So there's a frustration there in that moon. That's where the frustration of Moon in Aries is. It deals with when they choose to walk away from emotional situations and what they choose to replace that with. This is a moon sign that has a lot of energy as well. This is a moon sign that has to really exercise. It can have a temper if it holds back too much, if it represses. It's not a moon that will tend to repress or suppress. It will tend to speak honestly. Throat chakra tends to be good with Moon in Aries. It will tend to try to voice its emotions, but if it doesn't, it can actually get quite temperamental. Its energy can get so crazy, you can feel the electricity coming off of these people, and this is when illness can happen, bad temper tantrums, breaking things. You know, Moon in Aries really has to sometimes have anger management work as well if it gets to that point. This moon can benefit a lot from anger management, therapy, psychology, working, because they want to get into it. They want to figure it out. They want to rise and heal. So, yeah, Moon in Aries is a really good placement for the moon, typically. Very sweet. These people can also be very beautiful, very sweet. This whole Moon Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer side is generally quite attractive people, people who seem emotionally developed, people who are pretty people, okay? So they tend to, whether they're physically pretty or their presence is pretty, there's a prettiness about them. Okay, Moon in Taurus, let's talk about it. Moon in Taurus is one of the best signs for the moon, if not the best sign, because it comes past the hyper deep emotional level of home sign Moon in Cancer. And Moon in Taurus is the exaltation sign for the moon, so it's exalted here. Really, really beautiful emotional situations are inevitable for Moon and Taurus people. Even if they have it difficult, even if they have hard aspects to the Moon, they will live in comfort. They likely will not struggle for money too much, at least later in life. Likely they will make their home environment very comfortable, and always will have the opportunity to do that. There may be times where it's difficult, or there may be times of poverty, and this will really generate that need even stronger because they will see by going through like maybe slightly impoverished situations, if it's hardly aspected, where they really build that desire to have nice comfort around them. If it has no hard aspects, it's likely to be a sign that is born into wealth. It is likely to get inheritance. It is likely to marry well. It is likely to also have children that are very easy to work with, like easy-tempered children, good connections with children, like good friendship with children, strong connection with children. Very fertile energy as well. Moon in Taurus, Moon in Cancer, both likely to have many children, and to be also able to get pregnant very easy for the women. But for men as well, it's very fertile. Like it's very easy to get pregnant or to impregnate someone with Moon in Taurus, so you have to be careful there. But again, likely to have many children. Also likely to have very many eccentric projects. Things that are enjoyable that people respect you for. It's a prestigious moon. This is a wonderful moon to have. Like this is a beautiful lifetime. If you have Moon in Taurus, it means you did something well karmic like something karmically gifting in a past life. The only difficulty with this moon is that it gets very upset when it feels like it can't communicate something. Again, this is the throat, the voice, Taurus. The neck. They can have neck problems. They can have vocal problems, thyroid problems, even. Central nervous system problems for some if it's very negatively aspected. This is another one of the moon signs that can have a really strong temper, and it's like an unexpected one as well. It's not like constantly temperamental, it's not angry about everything, but after it's pushed, because you have the moon, which is the emotional depth, and Taurus, which is the bull. Bulls don't tend to just be angry, for the sake of being angry, but if you threaten them, or if you threaten their children, or if you in any way threaten them, they tend to be victorious in their temperament, and they are very strong, very also can tend to be overweight as well. They have to watch what they eat. It's very easy to be big, also like big heads. Nice skin though, really nice skin. They tend to be very good hormonally, so like no strong endocrine problems. The moon in Taurus really calibrates the nervous system and the endocrine system. Good appetite, like they know what they should eat, they know what they need to eat, they have a good sixth sense about what needs to go into their body. They will also gain weight if they're angry, though, because when they're angry, they feel that they have to have their weight behind them. Like a bull, like the heavier it is, the bigger it is, the more scary it is if it gets angry, and the more strong, the more weight it has behind it when it charges. So if you're a Taurus moon and you're gaining weight, it means that you don't feel secure in your environment, and you feel that you have to have like a plan B or a backup plan, so your body will hold on to things. This can be the same with their bank accounts. They'll oversave sometimes too frugal, sometimes, storing too much, perhaps too much food in the house, too much things which are not actually what they need, holding on to things too much, not letting go of things. It can be a hoarding moon. Okay, but overall, a really probably the best sign for the moon to be in. Beautiful emotional situations, emotional fulfillment during many chapters of life, great opportunities for connecting with their children, and great beauty as well. Very beautiful, very attractive people, very easily married, very marriageable, marrying up. Simplifying their life as it goes on. A really great moon to have. So let's talk about Moon in Gemini now. So Moon in Gemini, this is a fun moon. So this is a moon that gives someone a sense of fun in their lives. And when this moon stops having fun, it's not good, because they really make that quite clear and apparent. If this moon is not having fun, if this moon is not living like a child, or not having childlike fun in their lives, they will lash out, and they will make everyone know it. This is a good sign for the moon to be in. Very strong mental process, very healthy nervous system. Again, kind of like Moon in Taurus, healthy endocrine system. The body health is good with Moon in Gemini. Very strong people, and again, like Moon in Taurus, very hard to get down, and they don't tend to get sick easily. They don't tend to struggle with health issues. So great for the health. Their mind can move too quickly. They can be susceptible to headaches, migraines, also to doing things to slow down their mind, so they can be susceptible to alcoholism or anything which is a depressant to slow down that mind. They're kind of like squirrels. So Moon in Gemini is like a squirrel, or like birds even, how like they twitch and move really quickly and they'll like go forward, then go back, go forward, then go back. It's mercurial. It's a mercurial moon. So the emotions, the psychology is very mercurial and quick and doesn't really solidify. So Moon in Gemini will tend to go back and forth on situations, not being able to really make up their mind. It's a very indecisive moon, yet it has a good, deep understanding of what it wants, but it can be very indecisive about how it accomplishes that because it tends to be quite eccentric as well. It's an unconventional moon, kind of like Moon in Aquarius. Very unconventional education, unconventional ways of healing, unconventional family life. They're likely to have like stepchildren. They're likely to maybe marry many times, to maybe have children with many different people. It is likely for that. To have many partners, many love interests. Again, this is not a Venus sign, but the moon does also determine what we like, what we want in a partner, how we feel that emotional fulfillment and contentment, no doubt. An issue for Moon in Gemini is that they can be obnoxious sometimes. They have to be careful for it. They can be a deterrent. They really have to be around other air signs a lot of the time. Like deep water energies, deep earth energies will be a bit deterred if Moon in Gemini is like all over the place. But they don't tend to take that personally, and sometimes they would rather someone be deterred than to stay and not be compatible. And that's another blessing with this energy, is it doesn't tend to prolong incompatibility like you might see with Moon in Cancer, Moon in Scorpio. Those moon signs can prolong incompatibility, whereas Moon in Gemini, it really doesn't. And it can argue easily. It can be an argumentative moon sign. It's very debating. It's a good moon sign for a lawyer, actually, because it can see things from any perspective. It can argue anything. It can see the positive and negative in anything, kind of like Moon in Libra in this way, except it's more shifty. It's like even more shifty than Moon in Libra when it comes to, who's right, who's wrong. It's really not the most stubborn moon, so if you're stubborn with this placement, it probably comes from somewhere else in your chart. It's quite adaptable. Very, very adaptable moon. Can really live anywhere, can really exist anywhere, can find comfort anywhere. It's very flexible. The body tends to be very flexible. The mind is flexible, very open to other ideas. It's a great moon, and it's a very good friend moon. Like, if you have a friend with Moon in Gemini, that will be a great friendship energy. It's a great platonic energy. When it gets romantic or when it gets really deep, sometimes the person that they're with, they need to be airy. They need to be airy people as well, because people who are too deep or too complex with Moon in Gemini, it just becomes way too complex, way too layered. There's so many different ways to look at things. People tend to not really know the status of their own relationship with a Moon in Gemini. They don't really know whether it's good or bad, because Moon in Gemini is also quite loyal. I mean, it's not loyal, but it can always find a reason to stay. Likewise, it can always find a reason to go, but usually it doesn't really do either one. So Moon in Gemini will tend to be broken up with. It doesn't tend to break up with the different person, because it can stagnate quite easily just because of how many different perspectives its mind can take. This moon sign has to watch out for their spending as well. It can be an impulsive spending energy. It can find comfort in spending money. Moon in Taurus can also be that way slightly, but not as much as Moon in Gemini. Moon in Gemini likes the feeling of money. It is a money-centric sign for some reason, and I think that it's because, it wants that ability to be anywhere. It wants that ability to, move quickly. So it needs money to do that. So they will likely make a lot of money, especially if this is placed near the midheaven in the chart, or opposing like a Jupiter midheaven or something. It's a good moon sign for money because they have a lot of energy. They can really operate on like 4 to 6 hours of sleep and work long days and be less tired than most people who would. So they have really good energy. Okay. Moon in Cancer, one of the most beguiling moon signs, okay? Moon in Cancer is a tough one, but it's a beautiful one because the moon is at home in Cancer. It rules Cancer. Yet these people don't have an easy time of things because Cancer is the emotional depth, the emotional ebb and flow. The moon is the emotional depth, ebb and flow, psychology, fears, comforts, parenting. It's so similar. And of course, that's why the moon rules Cancer. People with moon in Cancer don't have easy childhoods. They don't have simple things. This is the thing about moon in Cancer. The goal and the karmic plan for moon in Cancer tends to be simplification. How can I make this easier? So things don't tend to start out very easy. And it's very likely that before the first Saturn return, so when I say childhood, of course I mean early childhood, but depending on where it's placed in your chart, the first 30 years for a moon in Cancer person, and really any moon in a water sign, Scorpio, Pisces, Cancer moons, the first 30 years are not easy, okay? The first 30 years have beautiful experiences because there has to be a spectrum generated. So for things not to be easy, they have to have inevitably been really great at one point. Moon in Cancer tends to really love their family and to have really eccentric fun people in their family, people who they really love. And a lot of the time, these people tend to be taken away from them. So yes, Moon in Cancer rules orphanages, abandonment, the death of parents, the loss of parents to drugs or to social work. Social work is a Moon in Cancer theme. So a lot of times, and this can be Sun in Cancer as well, but people with any strong amount of Cancer feel some amount of abandonment from their parents, and they are likely to maybe have even been orphaned or orphaned in some way, abandoned in some way. Perhaps the parents that they were born to drastically changed throughout their childhood, and it's as if that person that parented them in early childhood are no longer there, even if they're still there physically. This can also be a moon sign, kind of like Moon in Scorpio as well, that can have a parent who is ill, whether this be physically ill, mentally ill, emotionally ill. It does introduce those situations, but Moon in Cancer has a leg up because it always has an ability to feel emotionally stable in whatever environment. Moon in Cancer also creates a good parent, okay? So oftentimes they see the errors of their own parents and then they're able to fix that for the next generation. Someone born with Moon in Cancer comes into this lifetime with a goal to heal an ancestral karma. So oftentimes they will, through their own efforts, blank the canvas or give carte blanche to the generations. So the errors of their parents and perhaps 10 or 15 generations up that just went down and down and down. Finally, Moon in Cancer is incarnated in to realize this, to feel horrendous about it, and be inspired to change it. So Moon in Cancer make really great parents. They are really good at providing for their household. So, they're great providers. They're also great homemakers. They can do either one really well. They're great with money. They're great with saving. They're great with cooking. Moon in Cancer people have to cook for themselves. It's an incredibly karmic healing experience. They have to cook for themselves and they have to clean for themselves. It's not to say that Cancer Moon, once they get super successful, can't hire these services out, but they will karmically cleanse through upkeeping their household. The house is a strong thing for Moon in Cancer, the home. This does relate to your physical home, but it is also how you feel at home in your body. So Moon in Cancer, when it's not operating well, will sometimes get social anxiety or not want to leave the house. Will feel scared or faint or lightheaded or short of breath in public. This is the fourth house. So it's like the IC, it's the antithesis of public. So this moon has to show in some way to the public the things that they only show themselves to overcome that karma. A struggle that Moon in Cancer can have is with the body. So tendency towards weight problems, the endocrine system it needs more energy to function properly. Again, it's at home, so Moon in Scorpio, Moon in Pisces struggle a bit more with this than Moon in Cancer, but the Moon in all water signs, it's so watery, mold can grow. It needs to dry out, it needs sunlight, it needs to obviously be well hydrated too. Like water is so imperative for this moon sign, and all moon water signs require double the amount of water of anyone else, but also it has to dry out too, and it has to allow its emotions to dry out a bit. So sunlight, arid environments can actually be nice for Moon in Cancer, desert environments, believe it or not. But of course, being by water is really nice too. It just depends on what chapter they're at in their lives. If they're struggling with emotional health, or if they're feeling like hyper emotional, go to the desert. Moon in Cancer will get a lot better. If they're feeling apathetic, or if they're feeling not gray or blank or unemotional, go to the ocean, and Moon in Cancer will get better. It is a moon sign that is heavily influenced by its surroundings, heavily influenced by the house it stays in, heavily influenced by the geographical location, heavily influenced by the altitude or by the subtle actions of other people in the household. This can be a blessing and a curse because, again, on one hand, for a parent or something, this is a great quality. You can see big problems and get them out before they ever start. Likewise, for like an investigator or someone who is like a surgeon or a doctor, you can see like really subtle problems before they become big problems. But this can be a very difficult quality to live with as well, because it can be torturous, or I've known a lot of Moon in Cancer people who feel psychologically tormented a lot in their lives. There's just a sense of torment always around them. And this is the same with all the water signs in the moon. And Moon in Cancer has a leg up because it has an ability to change it or to overcome it quite more easily than the other water sign moons. But it just stands that it can struggle with that. A great thing for Moon in Cancer that also is there is the ability just to find happiness. This moon can really see the good in other people. It can see the good in where it's at. And it is challenged too. If Moon in Cancer is being pessimistic or negative, which is unlikely, they don't tend to be this way. But if there is like a strong, Capricorn opposition or something that really weighs down the rest of the chart, this moon really has to seek optimism, and it really has to work on its blessings and seeing where the good lies, because this moon really manifests quickly. And that's a thing about all of the planets being placed in a home sign or an exalted sign, is it helps manifestation. It makes manifestation stronger and more quick. So what this means is that quickly what you see or think or feel doubles itself. So you have a anger or cynicism or bitterness that quickly doubles itself. You have a great experience you enjoy, you love, you laugh, that doubles itself. Things are exponential with this moon sign, but it is a great one to have. Don't fear it. It just requires a bit of self-love, really. There can be self-sabotage with this moon, not as much as the other two water sign moons, and it becomes quickly apparent when it happens, but they really have to make sure that they're out for their own best interests, okay? Moon in Leo. This is a interesting moon. This is a fun one, actually. These people are incredible to be around. So these people are very popular. They might not feel like it. Again, this is the type of person who's like, oh, I was never popular in high school, or oh, I'm not that popular of a person, but all the outsiders are like, oh my gosh, you're like the most popular person that I know. This is a moon that looks the part, okay? This person looks emotionally stable. This person looks beautiful. This person is attractive. This person knows how to appeal to people. This person knows very quickly, very intuitively, this person knows how to get people on their side. A great sign for a politician, a great sign for a salesperson, really good for sales, really good for commissions. They just really know how to appeal, is the best way that I can put it. Traditionally, this is known as the baby moon. These people's needs can be hard to meet because they don't come from anyone besides themselves, which is not a bad thing inherently. But Moon in Leo does not tend to deny themselves wants or needs. And not that they should deny themselves either of those things, but they can sometimes borrow from their future. They can have spending problems. They can struggle with a very expensive taste. If they see something sweet, they want to eat it immediately. There's sometimes a toddler-like mind frame with Moon in Leo, where it sees something that it wants and it goes for it, and it sees this shiny thing over here and it goes for it. And sometimes there can be like a trap in place. They can walk straight into traps, or they can walk straight into like villain antagonistic people because they see something sweet. Sometimes they don't really look at the depth of a situation because it really isn't there for them. This isn't something that they see very clearly. Moon in Leo has a bit of a tunnel vision sometimes. It's a fixed sign. It's moon in fixed fire. So it's a stubborn moon sign. It is a Lucky moon sign, though, too, it's stubbornly lucky. It tends to get what it wants, and it tends to grow. It tends to have upward mobility, but it can find itself with many parasites, many leeches, many traps all around it. It can feel like it's walking through a minefield a lot of the time. And my challenge for Moon and Leo, I always challenge, if I ever have a client that I work with who has Moon and Leo, or they're, with someone who has Moon and Leo, the key is to find an emotional middle ground. These people cannot deny the emotional atmosphere. Oftentimes they won't see it unless they have like a lot of Scorpio placement or a lot of water placement elsewhere. They just won't see the emotional atmosphere of a situation, which sometimes ignorance is bliss. This is a moon sign who kind of likes to coin the ignorance is bliss thing. And it is because they tend to have really good health. They tend to by not being so emotionally weighed down, have a big leg up on other people. They can, though, struggle with narcissism, whether they themselves struggle with narcissism or they pull in narcissistic people. It will tend to be one or the other. They are so bright. They have such a light about them. They have such a attractiveness about them that a narcissist or even a sociopath will magnetize to them. So this is why Moon and Leo has to be able to see the emotional atmosphere of a situation, because they will attract people who just want to leech off of their light or their benevolence. So it is imperative that they start to see also the weight of their own words. This can be a moon sign that struggles with loyalty sometimes when there's nothing in it for them. Which, again, is not inherently a bad thing. We don't want to be loyal to a fault. We don't want to, just stay in a situation for somebody else. But oftentimes, even if they've been in a relationship for a long time, they can see something else that looks really nice and just quickly go away and disappear. There's an interesting thing about Moon and Leo energy coming together where it will shine really brightly, then it will disappear. The sun rises and it sets. And what they have to remember is that that is a cycle. So if they just disappear out of someone's life or disappear out of a job or disappear out of a situation with no proper, week, 2 weeks notice, et cetera, they will be pulled back is the problem. Whether that be by that person, like for example, if a Moon and Leo were to abandon someone, they will successfully do it, but then they will quickly attract the same situation from the other vantage point. So they'll then be abandoned by someone else. It's a very quick karmic moon. Something else that's pretty awesome about Moon and Leo, though, is it has a lot of emotional energy. This is the moon in the sign of the sun. So they can struggle with psychic vampirism, attracting narcissistic people who want to feed off of that emotional energy. These are also the types of people who will sometimes be in relationships that have constant fighting, constant emotional upheaval, just because there's so much emotional energy. They need to exercise. All fire sign moons have to exercise and have to do something to channel their excess emotional energy, because if they don't, they will just find themselves in constant emotional conflict with people. So Moon and Leo will then try to evade that and try to get away because that's not sweet. Again, baby moon, it doesn't like it, so it runs away. And then it can really easily find itself in a trap. Like it runs quickly, it finds something else that's sweet, and then gets trapped into this cycle of, constant emotional conflict, or involvement with a narcissist, involvement with a sociopath. They really, more so than any other moon sign, will struggle with attracting emotionally unhealthy people, just because emotionally unhealthy people tend to really need people around them who have excess emotional energy. So Moon and Leo is the perfect target, also because of that unawareness that it can sometimes struggle with of the emotional atmosphere of a situation. They're just such a prime target for narcissists and sociopaths or psychopaths, just because that type of mentally or emotionally unstably intelligent person sees Moon and Leo just as the prime candidate, whether this be consciously or unconsciously. So, and then Moon and Leo, it just starts to become more aware of the emotional environment. It starts to channel its emotional energy more. It starts to become more positive, more optimistic, less cynical. And then it stops attracting in those types of people. It's really a simple moon in the sense that it can quite easily control through its own feelings towards life the goodness that it brings in. Okay, Moon and Virgo. Moon and Virgo. I love Moon and Virgo. Very emotionally organized people. They will not tend to lose control of their emotions. They will not tend to give anyone, anything to worry about. They will always tend to be controlled or confined even in their emotions. They will have great homes. Again, moon is the planet or the body of the home. So moon and Virgo people have beautiful houses, beautifully decorated, perfect colors, perfect organization. And this will extend into their emotional holding as well. Perfect colors, perfect organization. And then there comes that moment in every Moon and Virgo's life where that gets ruined. And the breakdown happens, or the explosion happens. Moon in Virgo is also a Mercury moon, just like Moon in Gemini. So it's a quick moving moon. It is a adaptable moon. It can really live anywhere, but Moon in Virgo, more so than almost any other moon sign, does not like to be questioned on the way that they hold themselves, does not like for people to criticize them. It doesn't do so well with criticism, but it also changes it and fixes it. So if Moon in Virgo is criticized, it will quickly change it, but it doesn't enjoy that criticism. And most of the time, Moon in Virgo does not need too much criticism, yet it always is attracting in people who criticize it. So Moon in Virgo has to really look at the way that it views its life. Again, this is similar to Moon in Leo, actually, in the sense that Moon in Virgo can take a cynical nature, or can be a bit, hyper analytical or hypercritical of situations. It can really draw up a plan for the emotional environment. And unlike Moon in Leo, it's hyper aware of its emotional environment, and it knows, the complexes of everybody around it. It can predict people's emotions very well. It knows, what person will act what way and when. And this becomes quite torturous to Moon in Virgo, as it seems to sometimes not be able to turn that off. And it's constantly analyzing the emotional environment and constantly coming to conclusions, almost like a well-oiled machine or a computer is just automatically kind of drawing everything up. A great moon for an accountant, a great moon for someone who juggles a lot of numbers. They need to channel their energy in that way. Moon and Virgo people need a very strict budget. They need to be saving money. They need to be contributing to a retirement, because this makes them feel more secure and stable. They need to have something in their lives that is not questioned or can't really be criticized by anyone else. Something that is undeniably well, because they can always fall back on that. Moon in Virgo can also tend towards hyper concern of the health, because likely when they were children, they may have had some kind of illness, or even at different times of their lives. So they've usually had either, some kind of brush with death or some kind of fear of mortality where they become like hyper health focused. These are the types of people who take supplements every day, who maybe have different medicines that they have to take every day, always kind of focused on how to make their health better. So Moon in Virgo, some of them, this is unlikely, will not even be focused in this way. But again, majority, 80% of Moon and Virgo people, unless they've not had the health problem yet, in which case they would fall in that other 20%, they will constantly be thinking about, is this good for my health? Is that good for my health? Is this food, this supplement, that supplement? And this can deny them the true problem, because Moon and Virgo's health does not come from the pills that they take, or oftentimes it is unconventional, or there's a error sometimes in the diagnosis with Moon and Virgo. So they spend so much time in their life trying to figure out the truth of their body. And it oftentimes comes back to digestion and food. Virgo is the digestive system, and the moon is also like what you ingest, and also has a co-rulership of digestion. So they can usually find like a gluten-free diet or a vegan diet. And for all of them, that is not the right thing, but something relating with the diet or what they eat or how they eat or when they eat is oftentimes the solution to their problems. Likewise, this can be emotional too, like what they're emotionally in taking in, what they're, is there a volatility there? They don't hold up very well in emotional volatility, or, sometimes it's a bit of an unemotional moon as well, just because it's very structured and sometimes rigid in its emotional carrying. So it will, again, kind of like Moon and Aries, tend to avoid too emotional situations. But again, it's a nice intuitive sign for the moon. The moon and Virgo energy do synergize well. It's not a bad placement for the moon in any way. It just, the moon is very, what do I want to say? It's very flexible, and it likes, again, there's not a specific cycle for the moon. Each month and each cycle of the moon, it has a different amount of days. The amount of days that it spends in each sign is different. And Virgo hates that kind of thing. So this is a slight tension between the two signs, yet there is a natural rhythm that they share, just because Virgo is an earth sign, the moon is a water planet or water body, so there's a natural synergy there, but there's kind of a discomfort at the same time. So that basically in and of itself sums up the experiences of Moon and Virgo. It's hard to sometimes define, is this uncomfortable or do I love this, Moon in Libra. So this is a nice moon for experiencing nice things in life. Moon in Libra has a really great ability to enjoy life. It's a very kind of like Moon in Sagittarius in this way. It's very optimistic, tending. There can be sometimes financial struggles with Moon in Libra. It is sometimes noted as a borrowing energy, so they can sometimes need to borrow money, or they can find themselves in situations where they need to borrow money. So I always suggest for Moon in Libra to save well. They can sometimes have odd employment issues, and just things revolving around money. Moon in Libra is a Venus moon, so they will tend to spend frivolously sometimes, or what others might consider frivolously. They will spend for comfort. They will tend to have nice things. They are very concerned with style, very concerned with appearances, and this isn't in a vain way. They just derive a lot of comfort from their surroundings, a lot of comfort from what they have on their body. They want nice materials for their clothes. They want like real jewelry. They want things to be real. It's similar to Moon in Taurus, except Moon in Taurus tends to have an easier time acquiring these things. It's more natural. It's lucky in its acquirement of these nice things, whereas Moon in Libra will sometimes have to struggle a little bit more. But once it gets there, it can really do incredibly with how it maintains what it has. So this moon maintains really well. It does maintain wealth really well. Moon in Libra can also, aside from, stability, security, themes of money, it can have emotional volatility. This is a moon sign that can tend towards bipolarity. This is a moon sign that can tend towards certain personality disorders, or what people consider that, just because of how many different sides of the bed they find themselves on. Moon in Libra, kind of like Moon in Gemini, except a bit more extreme, will constantly be summing up situations, constantly seeing things from every perspective, and just constantly cued in to each perspective available. They will sometimes struggle to sleep because of that. They, during the nighttime, will tend to get very active minds, very active imagination, and just replaying things in their mind as well. They have a good memory. Moon in Libra, though, also will tend to naturally attract the right situation, and this is a benevolence of the moon being placed in a Venus sign, because the moon and Venus are very harmonious energies. So if a situation gets bad, the moon in Libra person will tend to just lose that situation, or they will change. Again, terrible things don't tend to prolong themselves with moon in Libra. So if a relationship goes bad, that person may find that they have a job in a different country, and the moon in Libra doesn't have a passport, so like naturally the distance happens and it ends. Or things that are not meant to happen just kind of fall through. And this is a blessing for Moon in Libra. And the good thing that they experience in their life is that situations which needed to fall through do. And likewise, the situations which need to build do. So they have like a really strong connection to karma. And sometimes they feel powerless in that. Sometimes they feel like they don't have autonomy over their lives, because there is a sense of just being swept up or swept away by karma or by their life's path. Sometimes they feel like even if they're alone, or even if they're solitary, that they don't have control. So yes, this moon can struggle for control sometimes. Again, this Libra Aries axis of the moon is a temperamental one. It is one that really pulls forth a lot of, stronger issues of control, temper, things like that. Moon in Libra can have a bit of temper as well. It can also be a moon sign that can have addictive tendencies as well, because again, there's a strong desire to indulge. There's a strong desire to have nice tasting things, so they do have to watch for their weight, and they do have to watch for how much they drink or how much they consume, just because what feels comfortable to them is excessive sometimes, so they have to beware of excess. They can also feel quite forlorn when they're single, so you can at times in certain Moon in Libra's paths see a desperation for relationships. This is Moon in 7th house energy. So oftentimes if it's not married or if it's not in a deep relationship, it can feel forlorn. So there's a lot of self-love and self-work that has to be done for Moon in Libra, because they sometimes feel inadequate, or they sometimes feel that if they're not attracting a lot of people or getting a lot of compliments or getting a lot of marriage proposals, they will feel as if they're unattractive or feel as if they're not enough. Really, this moon sign, almost as bad as like Moon in Scorpio or Moon in Pisces, can be insecure if it's not in the perfect relationship. Like this is the sign that's always swiping through Tinder, always looking, always on the dating apps, always, not sometimes giving enough time to themselves. But when Moon in Libra sees that, and when Moon in Libra starts to really prioritize themselves, what an exhale it is for them. Like, it's like Moon in Libra goes to the spa, or Moon in Libra does something just for them and drops the concern for the relationship. And all of a sudden there's this comfort, and all of a sudden there's this ease. And then like a bit of time passes and the perfect person comes in. Moon in Libra always finds what they're looking for when they're not searching for it. So there's a riddleistic karmic energy with Moon in Libra, and it just has to give itself space, and it just has to learn to find the enjoyment and the benevolence in every situation, because it does exist for them. Moon in Scorpio. Okay, so this is one of the debilitated, traditionally, placements of the moon. This is a tough one. This is a deeply emotional moon placement. This is a sign of the moon that tends to sometimes not come up for air emotionally, tends to never leave the emotional spectrum, tends towards reclusion, seclusion sometimes. This is a moon sign that is actually a bit difficult to speak on and a bit difficult to articulate, just because it struggles to speak and articulate. Moon in Scorpio struggles with throat chakra. We are on the Scorpio-Taurus axis of the zodiac in the moon, so the emotions are so complicated, the emotions are so deep, that there tends to be a struggle to communicate them. And this is the sort of the root of issues for the Moon in Scorpio person, is that when they communicate their emotions, they're not satisfied with how they've communicated it. They feel as if people do not get it. They feel as if people interpret the wrong message from their emotions, and this breeds an immense frustration within Moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio oftentimes is not seen as Moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio tends to want to look quite meek. It tends to be an understated moon. It tends to be a reserved moon. Again, this is highly dependent on how it's aspected in the chart, because this is also a moon that can be extremely flamboyant and extremely out there, extremely bright, extremely like all over the place. It's extreme one way or another. It's either very conservative and reserved, or very extreme and bright. And sometimes they can even linger in this like middle zone of grayness. So this is a moon that's like a bit histrionic sometimes, actually. This moon can be very concerned with how it appears, quite afraid to appear powerless, quite afraid to look out of control. It can be a vain moon. It can be extremely self-sabotaging. It can be self-punishing, self-disciplining. It's a very diligent moon. It's a very smart moon, very cunning, cunning to a fault. It employs cunning unnecessarily sometimes. It can tend towards manipulation or being manipulated, and it can tend towards addiction as well. This moon can be insatiable, and that's, again, another root for this moon, is that and perhaps the root even beneath the whole communication issue is the insatiability of Moon in Scorpio. It wants to feel ease. It wants to feel simplicity. And it enjoys the process also of getting there, so it can generate difficult experiences for itself just to watch itself, rise from the ashes. It can become addicted to the Phoenixian cycle of, bursting into flames, becoming ashes, and then rising. It goes over and over and over and over again. For this reason, this moon becomes very, very apt for health problems, digestive problems, hormone issues, endocrine problems, nervous system problems, emotional health problems. Most all Moon and Scorpios have some kind of body chemistry issue. It does make the chemicals within the body more potent. because Scorpio has rulership over the body's chemicals, so like cortisol, different hormones, testosterone, estrogen, all of these signalers in the body that are like these potent serums, like poison, that send different messages throughout the body, have a Scorpio rulership. And when you put that energy with the moon, it hypersensitizes these things. So the body is super sensitive to its own chemicals, super sensitive to its own messengers. So things like acne, things like really difficult periods for women, really, irregular, really painful cycles for women is a big, most women with moon in Scorpio really struggle. I've never met a moon in Scorpio woman who doesn't struggle a lot with their own like feminine cycles. And then also the Scorpio males will tend to have like a monthly cycle as well. Of course, it's not physical. I like to joke that moon in Scorpio males also PMS. It's so funny. They're very emotional. Actually, moon in Scorpio men are super, super emotional and super, they tend to be open, and this moon sign is not all bad. Like it's not like none of the moon signs are worse to have, because sometimes this moon sign looks very normal, very average, and very easy to deal with. Oftentimes they'll get into relationships, and the relationships may last longer than they need to, and then the other person in the relationship is like, oh my god, this is not what I signed up for. This person is crazy. They get called crazy a lot. They get called insane a lot. They're shocking. It's a shocking energy to deal with, because like what you see is not what you get, for sure. They project a very stable, secure, level-headed, optimistic, jovial perception, when in reality there are a lot of deep emotional things being worked on, especially if they're younger than 30. At the first Saturn return, moon in Scorpio tends to have a shift, just like moon in Taurus. We talked about it. This axis deals a lot with the Saturn return. So any moon in Scorpio under the age of 30 will likely be quite volatile, quite addictive, quite sexually wounded in some way. This is a strong placement for sexual abuse, or like having been sexually abused. If this placement is wrapped up with Pluto and Mars in any way, it is possible for rape, or any type of, or even if it's not like a sexual rape, like these people feel like imposed upon, and they can sometimes, if they're not careful, grow to be imposing. So they have to watch out for that. This moon sign can be incredible for investigative work. This moon sign can be incredible for, getting to the bottom of crime. It's a great interpreting energy, so like other languages. It's a great energy for psychic work as well, healing people psychically, healing people through helping them to understand something about themselves. This moon sign really comes into other people's lives to show them the difficulty. A lot of times moon in Scorpio people will appear in someone's life when a huge transformation is about to come on. This is the same for Sun Scorpio as well. Or anyone with like a lot of Scorpio or 8th house energy. They appear on the path when a huge shift, change, or just transformation is about to take place. So that comes with a lot of pressure, and sometimes that gets blamed on the moon in Scorpio. Like the person thinks that it's the moon in Scorpio's fault that they suddenly had to change, when it would have happened anyway. But it's like the moon in Scorpio comes in actually to ease the transition. But a lot of times, again, that sensory experience of them being there makes the association be that of the moon in Scorpio causing it. So this sign can be very unpopular too. This sign can be reviled. The moon in Scorpio can be hated by people, or it can be super loved. It's very extreme. It depends on what side of the spectrum they're on, but they will tend to go through periods in their life where they're like very, very loved by people, then like very hated, and then they move, they reinvent themselves, and the cycle becomes one. And then they can really rise up to this place of like not caring, which is important for moon in Scorpio. Not being so concerned with the opinions of others, and really finding themselves, loving themselves. Having their own house is really good. And all the moon and the water signs deal a lot with the house and the home and the environment in which you sleep and do your routines. So that's always good for them to get like a better environment going. My last recommendation for moon and Scorpio, they just really have to be able to tune out of things. They have to be able to, like leave their work behind. Not good to work around the clock, not good to emote around the clock. They have to have sort of a set time when they're going to deal with things, and then be able to tune out a little bit. Otherwise they get sick, they get ill. This is a sign that can kill themselves emotionally. This placement, especially if it's aspected difficultly by Pluto or Neptune or any of the outer planets, really Mars even, this sign can destroy itself emotionally. Their emotions have a strong impact on their body because of the chemistry of the body, and they're extra sensitive to the chemistry. So the anger reaction, the fear reaction, it's felt more deeply, and it happens over and over and over again. They don't give themselves a break. They struggle to heal it. And even sometimes when they get past things, they'll look back into the past and still experience that. So they have to be able to tune out. They have to get past things. They have to let things go. It's really hard for this moon sign to let things go. They have to, because they just cannot function healthily if they're holding on and retaining things. They bloat. They tend to retain, certain chemicals of the body, certain food, constipation, digestive issues. This is all possible with this moon. So they just really have to be dialed in to tuning out and letting go of things which no longer serve them, and knowing what to hang on to as well. Okay. One of the more difficult to articulate moon signs, because and again, check out my book below, my ebook, which you can pre-order. I'll go more into it there. It's hard to, and I feel like I've taken up so much time with that particular one just because it's a difficult to explain one. Because there's a really good side to Moon in Scorpio too, don't get me wrong. There's a really great sensory experience of life with Moon in Scorpio. So again, check the description box below if you want to see more. Okay, let's see. Moon in Sagittarius. Ooh, I love Moon in Sagittarius. Moon in Sagittarius has a good time. The emotions are something that support the body. The emotions are something that build one up with Moon in Sagittarius. They really get behind themselves. They really get confident. Very, very confident moon sign. Very sexy, attractive moon sign as well. Very happy-go-lucky, very jovial, very philosophical. Bad things happen to Moon in Sagittarius. It's a learning lesson. They philosophize and they move on and they let go. Great for a Moon in Scorpio person to be around a Moon in Sagittarius person, just FYI. Any of the Moon and water signs will do good with Moon in Sagittarius people because they need to learn how to do this. They need to learn how to go through something difficult and turn it into something motivating and healthy. Not something ambitious to a fault, but something healthy. So Moon in Sagittarius is gifted with the ability to turn difficult situations into motivations, to really easily rise from the ashes, to not need that experience, but to be able to do it. And to also make people comfortable. This is a great moon sign for humor, for laughter, for making your family, your parents, your children feel at home, making them feel funny, laughing. Things which are embarrassing don't exist for Moon in Sagittarius. They're very comfortable in their own skin. They're very untuned from humiliation and embarrassment, which is the lesson that I feel the moon learned in Scorpio. It learns that embarrassment and humiliation are not worth the time of the day. So it really only finds humor in embarrassment. And that can sometimes be a journey for some of them, depending on the degree of the moon. Sometimes they can be quite embarrassed early in life, and they realize, oh, I just have to get past this. I'm not going to keep going with all this embarrassment. It's a great moon sign for entrepreneurial endeavors. Their emotions feel naturally supported by doing many things at once. So good for multitasking, good for entrepreneurship, not great for the daily grind, doing the same thing every single day forever. It will start to feel burnt out. The only downside of Moon in Sagittarius is it can burn out easily, so it does have to learn how to use its energy more efficiently sometimes. They also have to be careful about their bursts of energy too. They can, they can exercise a lot. This moon sign is typically an athlete, especially if Mars is also in a fire sign. They have to be careful and be aware of overdoing their heart, overdoing their, even their digestion, like eating too much, then exercising. It can be prone to just too much stress on the body, because it's also a bit of an adrenaline junkie as well. It gets a good emotional high out of skydiving or foreign traveling, going into the middle of the rainforest. I think of Tomb Raider when I think of Moon in Sagittarius. I think of Lara Croft, and I feel like she's a Moon in Sag for sure. They really like to be off in the middle of nowhere in very beautiful, serene environments, and finding out some type of hidden truth about that, and philosophizing about being off and secluded in some very unpopulated place. Moon in Sagittarius is not scared. That's what I love about Moon in Sag. It's one of the least fearful placements to have. So these people are so attractive in that way that they are just not scared of things that make other people really frightened. And again, this is why I urge Moon and water sign people to get with Moon and Sag people. Also, Moon and Sag people can be good with Moon and water sign people because it helps them to see some of the realities. It helps them to gain more emotional depth. which they can sometimes be seen as emotionally shallow by other people. Sometimes, and this is another issue with Moon and Sag, is sometimes if they have someone close to them who's going through something really difficult, they can tend to be like, oh, let's go out, let's have a rebound relationship, let's just go partying, let's just go on a trip, that'll fix it all. Like, there's not sometimes a lot of acknowledgement of what's difficult, or a lot of just holding space for difficulty, or they tend to struggle with bereavement and grief as well. They tend to try to deny it. Moon and Sag can struggle with denial sometimes, so they do have to work on that, but sometimes that's also not bad. Sometimes, again, grief and bereavement are very important, but they're not always warranted, and Moon and Sag knows that very well. I always suggest for Moon and Sag people, if they're feeling depressed or if they're feeling like they're struggling in life, go on an adventure, see something new, get out of the house, get in public. Moon and Sag needs public. It's a social butterfly as well. It needs public events. It needs to eat a lot of food as well, and to exercise. It can actually tend towards gout, though, swelling, and that's a traditional thing with Moon and Sag. They have to watch out for like the salt that they eat, how they retain water. They have to be careful of eating too many like saturated foods because they can tend to swell. Okay, Moon in Capricorn. So this is the other debilitated moon sign that struggles a little bit, and that is because Moon in Capricorn is often punished in childhood for emotional experiences. Moon in Capricorn can be antagonized by people. Moon in Capricorn tends to be painted as the villain of a situation because Moon in Capricorn doesn't always relate so easily to people. Typically, Moon in Capricorn was raised in a very frugal, conservative, perhaps religious environment. Not always. This is not always the case, but typically the ideals, the morals of the early environment of Moon in Capricorn are very, very strict and very unemotional. There tends to be punishment for showing emotion. There tends to also be someone who has an emotional problem in the family, or someone who has an emotional, what do I want to say? Like, the word that's coming up is dysregulation. So someone may be bipolar, someone has this like thought that they're unemotional, but when the moment is right for them, they have explosions, explosive emotional experiences from, oftentimes it's the father actually with Moon in Capricorn, but it can go either way. It can be the mother or the father, the disciplinary parent with Moon in Capricorn, the less nurturing parent, and that's not always the father. It can sometimes be the mother. This person tends to command emotionlessness, and they tend to 95% of the time also be emotionless, and then the other 5% of the time like explosively volatile. So that from the early childhood and early environment with Moon in Capricorn tends to generate issues of emotion, of course. So if you're dating a Moon in Capricorn person, or if you're not a Moon in Capricorn and you see someone has a Moon in Capricorn, you almost have to give them a bit of leeway, because you have to understand that from a very young age there's a conditioning to like be unemotional and then have like small little eruptions. This can also be the case with Moon and Scorpio. These are both the debilitated moon signs. The Moon in Capricorn also tends to have money issues as well. Again, when I said frugal environment, they were probably punished for wanting things which weren't necessary. This is the type of moon sign that in childhood may have been forced to wear shoes that weren't the right size, or hand-me-downs that were not properly fitting. They might have been picked on in school for not having like the current styles. Usually this moon sign's parents do not like to spend money on them, or are just addicted to saving money, or it can also be a moon sign that is raised in poverty as well. This can even be a moon sign that has homelessness, raised on the streets as well, or having had to live on the streets at one point in time. This can be a moon sign also that finds extreme wealth. It can also be raised in extreme wealth too. It's usually one or the other, but in that extreme wealth, there are all of these like parameters, and they may not actually be allowed to spend money within that wealth, or they may be forced to do embarrassing things for money. This is a sign of moon that can tend towards prostitution as well. Moon in Scorpio is also that way. Moon in Leo can be this way. And moon in Cancer in certain circumstances, and moon in Aries and Taurus can tend towards prostitution as well if there's a lot of emotional wounds. Oh, and moon in Libra too, but this deals more with the Venus-Pluto connections. Anyway, I'm getting off topic a little bit. Moon in Capricorn really has one of the most pivotal emotional paths to walk down where they have a moon sign that is not necessarily associated with emotional expression, yet it has a journey there. So oftentimes with moon in Capricorn, they have to spend some time in solitude, or they have to be away from relationships for a bit of time to understand who they are. Because who they are, when they leave the family household, tends to not be authentic. They tend to be very conditioned and very puppeted, even sometimes. And they tend to also just be wounded. There's always not an obvious wound with Moon in Capricorn, but there's also such an enjoyment of healing those wounds. And this is where Moon in Capricorn really shines. It can be a great therapist. It can be a great counselor, because it, through learning how to heal its own wounds, gains a lot of ground on how one does this. And Moon in Capricorn is incredible at healing the wounds of others, and also at providing. It's a great providing energy, and again, a great homemaker, kind of like Moon in Cancer. This opposition, this axis of the moon is really good at providing for others. It has a tribal mentality. Oftentimes Moon in Capricorn will have a lot of children, kind of like Moon in Cancer, and it's sort of like a tribe. One thing that Moon in Capricorn has to be careful of is bitterness, cynicism, and having a chip on their shoulder. Again, the early environment can be so painful. The issues of money can be so discouraging that they can become permanently affected by these issues, and at times want to see other people go through it. So if Moon in Capricorn gets very upset at someone, sometimes they will try to put that person through what they've been through to spite them or to even the playing field. They get very frustrated by people not understanding what they've been through or not accounting for it. So they will sometimes try to put their significant others through that situation to, in their mind, in their heart, this isn't something that's mean or toxic, because they just want understanding. But there's something that sometimes doesn't click in Moon in Capricorn, that's actually a very mean thing to do. They can be loyal to a fault as well. So if a relationship is very toxic and very codependent, sometimes they won't register that because it's what they're used to, and it may pale in comparison to what they grew up with. So they will not really try to leave a relationship. They won't really try to break something off unless they're just not interested, in which case they will just leave. But if they love you, or if they're in love with the person they're with, nothing will make them break up with you. Like, they will, regardless of how toxic or codependent a situation is, they will tend to stay. And this is why they tend to get broken up with, and this puts more trauma into their life, and they don't understand why people leave them. They have to stop doing that thing where they put people through what they've been through just to make them understand. It's very controlling. This is a major control issue, moon sign. For sure. So they just have to be careful with that, and they have to try to work through that and overcome that, because what really waits on the other side for Moon in Capricorn is just an extremely nurturing, benevolent relationship in their home. It starts to act more like the opposite Moon in Cancer once it can see itself, once it can overcome its own problems. Again, great room for an evolutionary path with this moon sign when it comes to emotions, okay? Moon in Aquarius, I like Moon in Aquarius a lot. It's a bit more detached emotionally. It's not the most emotional moon sign. It's not the most emotional experience for a moon sign. So what does Moon in Aquarius mean? Moon in Aquarius does not need to be surrounded by hyper emotional situations. They will tend to, kind of like Moon in Aries, walk away and leave a situation before it becomes hyper emotional. They would rather not be involved. They tend to have quite a good temperament. They don't hold themselves too manically or too depressively. They tend to be quite neutral on a lot of subjects. They can have a lot of political inclinations. They tend to be quite change oriented. They like to see change happening. They like to see something different, something radical even, or something of someone's life that no longer remains the same. If a Moon in Aquarius comes into your life, it likely means that it's time for a big change, or it's time to really move forward on your path. Moon in Aquarius is all about progress, so it really does not like stagnation. Moon in Aquarius, more than any other moon sign, hates to stay the same. It hates to be stuck in a situation, so it will not stay in situations where it feels that the other person or that the situation at hand is going to stagnate. It will remove itself from that very quickly. Moon in Aquarius is also super creative, and Moon in Aquarius and Pisces, these last two signs, are kind of detached from the human experience. Like they're almost like robots and aliens, is what I like to say. I tend to say this about the sun signs, but I might as well mention it here too. Aquarius are like robots and Pisces are like aliens. They're not quite human, so they're a bit of a different breed than the rest of the signs here. And Moon in Aquarius is so creative, it's so eccentric, it's so out there. It's definitely the sign, the moon sign, that wants something that is different. It's just not the same as anybody else. So they have to stay tuned into their creativity. They have to stay connected to their imagination. They can't do things that are too Saturnian. Saturn is actually exalted in Aquarius, so I kind of take that back actually. Saturnian is good, but they just have to have diversity and variety in their life. They can't work the salaried 9 to 5 job for 50 years and retire, or 30 years or whatever. They have to move through. They have to do different things. They have to work at this job for a while, then run their own business for a while, then go to this job, then promote here, then be the manager for this. And they have to always kind of be looking towards the next thing. Otherwise, they get quite discouraged. I do encourage this moon sign to try to make more friends. They need other insights. They can't get too cued in to what is within. Aquarius is the 11th house, so this is a very public, social, platonic energy, very societal, very political even. They have to really be involved in the world and the collective around them. Otherwise, they can actually tend towards instability and can just get people might what other people might see as crazy. It's not crazy, it's not insane, it's not that. Although, I mean, one could argue, but I'm just kidding. It just starts to disconnect from what societally is expected, which to other people looks odd. So not that Aquarius should try to look normal, they just need to stay connected to things that they like that is outside of their own bubble, because they just start to struggle to connect with people if they don't. So this moon sign needs to connect. It needs social experience. It needs romantic experience as well, although actually, I've seen more moon in Aquarius than any other sign that tends towards celibacy. It can actually be disconnected from the sex drive. It can be disconnected from wanting to connect with other people in that way. But of course, that is not the case for all moon in Aquarius. Of course, there are moon in Aquarius who have very high libido. They actually tend to have high libido, which is another interesting thing. Like celibate yet high libido. I don't know. I don't have any Aquarius in my chart, but I do. I understand. But they are just that kind of explains Aquarius in a nutshell, though. Like, and you can apply that to anything in their lives, like high libido yet celibate. Very incredible wine palate yet don't drink. Things like that. Like they might be able to know what is the best brand of alcohol, yet they don't drink. They are an expert on cars, yet they feel that everyone should be a pedestrian. There are things like that. Like they know the different types of engines or how to fix the engine of a car, yet they, by their own choice, choose not to own a car because of the carbon emissions. It's this type of thing that Moon in Aquarius does that kind of can put other people off, but also be very attractive to some people. Like there's a mystery there. Like, what is this? But getting serious, they have to watch her being too emotionally detached. Sometimes people will just feel like they're not all there, like they're not present for them. There can be a bit of a vacancy, a bit of a glassy, like stare, a distant stare, a stare off into space that Moon in Aquarius has. And to them, it doesn't feel like that. Like they're usually just deep in thought and like going through something. There's like an algorithm that Moon in Aquarius is always involved in. It's Moon in Uranus sign, which is all about, the synapse in the brain and all about, being able to multitask. Like these people have incredible brains, incredible mental functioning, incredible mental process, really good for like a coder, like someone like computer programming or coding or some type of like visual design, something that deals with a lot of like codes. It's really good for Moon in Aquarius because their brains honestly need exercise. Like they need to be like going through codes and stuff to help karmically cleanse themselves. So yes, Moon in Aquarius, it has a lot of things that its mind is always on, and this makes them appear to others as quite vacant and quite unavailable. So they need something like computer programming or, investigation, something very formulaic. Even mathematicians can tend towards Moon in Aquarius. And they have to do those things so that they can be vacant and present and in their body. This this moon sign, almost more than any other moon sign, can get really out of its body. It can get very ungrounded. And because of this, they can actually struggle with things like agoraphobia, claustrophobia, things which deal with like spatial environment, like feeling just out of their body, out of body experience, astral projection, not really understanding their body. So they have to really get grounded. They have to really work on their root chakra and get out of the crown a bit more, get out of the third eye a bit more. And they feel so much healthier when they do. Exercising, sexual experiences for other people, really feeling grounded, really connecting with the earth is so important for Moon in Aquarius. Okay, Moon in Pisces. Yeah, Moon in Pisces. Here we are at the last moon sign. Aw. This is a beautiful, beautiful moon sign. I love Moon in Pisces. I think this is a great placement for the moon because you don't have the pressure of Moon at home in Cancer and the like necessitation of the incredible channeling of the moon. And you also don't have the deep debilitation, depth, inner turmoil of the moon in Scorpio. You have this like very fluid, very deep, open ability where Moon in Pisces can just let the moon energy just vacillate. And there's like a flow. There's a feminine type of just exhale with the moon in Pisces. These people have a good ability of just existing in their environment. They can really find comfort anywhere. They can really find beauty everywhere. A great sense of humor, great eccentricity, great ability to make other people enjoy their lives. It's also very beautiful, like a very physically beautiful, very, very haunting type of beauty with Moon in Pisces. Whether this be the physical appearance or the personality, there's something enigmatic about Moon in Pisces. There's something just very... People want to investigate it. People want to probe it. People want to understand more about it. So yes, this can be a very popular moon sign, actually. This can be a very sensual and loving energy. It can be a bit aloof to a fault. Like, again, it's a bit removed and it has emotional connection with people. This isn't aloof like Moon in Aries, Moon in Libra, Moon in Aquarius. This is just this sense of, again, being out of the human experience, being almost alien. These people don't quite look human either. They will tend to have like very big eyes and like thinner faces, even if it's not really making sense with the rest of their body. They just tend to be different looking, and they tend to also act different too. There's just an unhuman quality about them, which can be very attractive to a lot of people. They do also have a lot of psychic ability. They tend towards mediumship. They can feel the energy around them very easily. A lot of them have visions. A lot of them have the ability to easily pick up on the emotions of everybody present. And for this reason, this moon can get very drained. And this, again, is the case with all the water sign moons. Their psychic, empathetic ability is so strong that they can, become very drained and tend towards endocrine problems. The body's energy centers can be too stressed to keep up with it all. So they require a lot of sleep. They require a lot of rest. They require a lot of time recharging and a lot of time in solitude as well. But Moon in Pisces less so than Moon in Cancer and Moon in Scorpio. Moon in Pisces can actually recharge in any environment. They can be, in a huge crowd or in solitude or anywhere and really be able to turn that switch on, which is a very lucky ability to have for Moon in Pisces. Another subtle thing that I've noticed about Moon in Pisces is that they have a really incredible connection to life and their own life force. They're very keyed into like the natural ebb and flow of life, like life and death. They're very connected to their own mortality, and they tend to really live their life to the fullest. Like they tend to sort of have this awareness of death, which might sound depressing to some people or might sound odd also. But there's an emotional connection to death. Perhaps they've had a lot of people die around them, or they've experienced a lot of loss, or just many different chapters of life that are introducing the archetype of death, not necessarily the death of people. But for a lot of them, there are sort of like very difficult deaths, like early in life, like people around them who die young and things like that. So they're very tied into like living their life in a way that is not shallow, in a way that is not denying them of their time. There's an odd time connection with Pisces, and time is ruled by Saturn, but I also find that Neptune has an interesting connection to time in the sense that it's very tied to using time in an enjoyable way. Again, Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So again, we get the energy of a Venus Neptune with the moon in Pisces. These are very harmonious energies. So oftentimes time is on the side of the moon in Pisces person. Oftentimes they spend their time in a way that really honors their life and their life force. And if moon in Pisces is really struggling, or if moon in Pisces is struggling in their evolution, they will be spending their time in ways that are not authentic, or they will be forced to put a lot of time towards something that is not enjoyable or something that they don't enjoy. And they really have to use that experience to change that and to make their lives something that's enjoyable. They usually don't struggle so much with money or career. It's not to say those things can't be difficult, but they tend to just work out for Moon in Pisces because the emphasis is not on making money. The emphasis is not on the house or the the things like the mundane things of life. Again, by Moon in Aquarius, we've left the human experience. So this lifetime for Moon in Pisces is not about money or getting to the top. We finish that off with Moon in Capricorn, and then we're in a new paradigm as a Moon in Pisces person. So money will tend to come to them, or they will tend to find themselves in a job that is very eccentric and enjoyable and honors this need to live their life authentically, that also pays a lot. Again, money, success, friendship, even relationships are all actually kind of secondary to the Moon in Pisces experience. I always think of Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter when I think of Moon in Pisces. It's very aloof, like happy-go-lucky, but like also emotionally heavy, yet loving of life and not very dense type of energy. It's hard to explain, but for those of you who are Harry Potter fans, you sort of understand maybe. But yes, then I always remind Moon and Pisces people to just remember the things that they enjoy. Fantasy is good, like deep fantasy novels, like video games, even for Moon and Pisces people. They tend to really love gaming or reading or something that immerses them into a new world. So I tend to recommend that for them. They can also become addicted to this, and they can see that their relationships fall to this. They can struggle sometimes to relate to people or to connect with people. Like, they're not really the most social energy. Like, they like it, but sometimes they would rather just be in their own world or be in their own imagination, because that's where they find emotional fulfillment. Because it's also a void energy. Moon in Pisces, there's a big void. So time, again, it just kind of, they go into sort of this timeless cocoon as Moon in Pisces people. And they need that. But the thing with that is a lot of things fall by the wayside when they're there. And that's not even necessarily bad for them, but it can generate just a lot of conflict or chaos around them. Moon and Pisces do tend to find themselves amongst chaos or amongst terror, even for some of them. And they are incredible in that they can really not be brought down by that. And they really transcend it, and they serve as like a transcending energy for the rest of the people around them. I also think of prophets when I think of Moon and Pisces. I do think of like Jesus Christ. I think of people who have been worshipped or prophetized in some way. Religious leaders can tend towards this placement as well, because there is just an otherworldliness about them, like a connection to God or universe or that which is greater than humanity to Moon and Pisces people. And this is also true to other more intricate Pisces placements as well, but I thought I would include it. Overall, though, Moon and Pisces, the life is like very enjoyable. Like, it's a great placement for the moon. The emotions are heavy. There's a lot of tears, perhaps. Moon and Pisces will cry about anything, like sadness, happiness, laughter. They tend to be very watery. They like sweat easily. They tend to have bladder issues as well. That's kind of a funny thing with Moon and Pisces. Anything which deals with producing liquid, they tend to do in abundance. Endocrine system is actually pretty healthy. Stress response is pretty healthy, even though they're quite stressed. Like, the stress response is lighter, so they can do it more frequently. And they relate pretty easily. They emote easily. They empathize and sympathize easily. Everybody wants a Moon and Pisces friend, but they are rare. You don't see them very often. They tend to, and this can be with all Moon and water signs, they tend to sort of not be that visible. So if you have one in your life, you are quite lucky, a Moon and Pisces at least, because they will connect you to something greater, higher, and more true to what your life is. So yeah, everyone, I think that I will conclude there with Moon in Pisces. And thank you so much for taking the time to check out this channeling of the moon signs. Again, check below to pre-order my ebook, which will be coming out in July, about the moon, which goes up more deeply into all of this. This has just been the moon through the signs. I will also be talking about the moon through the houses there, the moon connected to planets, and just speak about some other subtleties which don't get a lot of speech about the moon. So the moon is an incredible opportunity for healing. We're, as this video is being aired, about to go to full moon in Scorpio, but you could be watching this at any time during any moon cycle. But yes, it is a great time for understanding the moon more. And again, thank you so much for supporting my channel with likes, comments, and subscribe. My name is Sky. If it's your first time here, I do monthly readings, monthly horoscopes, tarot readings, and weekly videos. I post every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, along with the other videos that I do. And I have a list of stuff below if you would like to work with me one-on-one, or if you'd like to check out my ebook, which is coming out soon, or if it has come out by now, by the time that you're watching it, it will be available below. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm wishing you much love and light. Get to know your moon, get to know your emotions, get to know what your needs are at a deeper level in connection with the moon. It's a great time for it. All right, we'll be talking later. Bye, everyone. Oh, and you should be able to click the center of the screen to find moon symbols and pre-order that or purchase that now. That should be right there in the middle. You can click it. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. If it's something that you would like to check into. Bye, everyone.